Hi, I'm Chef Anthony at Woodstone. Today I'm going to be walking you through the features and benefits of our new OneRev Rotating Pizza Oven. This oven is really unlike any other rotating oven on the market. It has a completely innovative design. It allows an operator to load a pizza, cook in one rotation, and produce a perfectly artisan pizza without needing an experienced chef. Because of that, we think of it as a labor saver. You can really load a pizza, walk away, build your next pie, or attend to a customer without having to watch or rotate the pizza. It'll come out consistently every single time. The first thing you'll notice is that center flame right in the middle of the oven. It's the signature Woodstone flame. You see it in all of our ovens out there. It's visible, it's very bright. You can see what you're doing in there. It's also appealing to the customer when they walk in the door. It's kind of the first thing that they see. It's also providing top heat for baking pizzas. So it is modulating up and down depending on the temperature that it's seeing in the oven. And it's providing heat to the ceramic dome that's inside the oven. The second thing you can't see right now are the underfloor infrared burners. They're underneath this rotating floor. They're evenly dispersed. There are 5 of them throughout the oven. And those will modulate on and off as we bake pizza to provide the correct amount of heat into the floor. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later when we actually start cooking pizzas. The third heat source in this oven comes from our finishing flame that you can see off to the left here. That flame is constant, and as the pizza approaches it, it begins to color the top. It passes right underneath towards the doorway. As right before we pull it, we have a nice evenly baked pizza on top, and that's achieved from the finishing flame. Next, I want to talk about some of the materials that this oven is made of. If you're familiar with Woodstone, you know that most of our ovens are made up of thick cast ceramic. That's how we're able to achieve high production in our fire deck ovens. When we went to a rotating floor, we realized we needed a more responsive material. So although we still have ceramic up in the dome because we like the even heating properties and the way that it helps bake the tops of the pizza, we went with a metal core floor so that it's more responsive to the burners that are coming on and off and the pizzas that we're adding to the oven. So the floor is metal core with a ceramic coating. It allows us to get the same texture, the same bake that we like in all of our existing ovens that have ceramic, but it's a much more responsive surface. It's instant recovery, so we can keep loading again and again and get really high production. Next, we're going to talk about the controls for the oven. The OneRev is intended to be set up one time. So when an operator gets the oven, they're going to set the profile up for the style of pizza that they're doing. Once that profile is achieved, they never have to worry about heat management again. The oven takes care of all of that for them. They don't have to rely on an experienced chef or cook to adjust controls or adjust flame inside the oven. The oven will do all of that on its own. Next, I'm going to give you an overview of the various control settings that the operator has to set up their heat profile. So here are the controls and dials available to the customer to set up their oven. First thing here is the speed. That's the rotation of the floor. You can go from 90 seconds to 6 minutes. The second is the top heat. That's obviously going to be adjusting the color, darker or lighter on top of the pizza. The bottom heat to achieve the right bake on the bottom of the pizza. The last dial here is the hearth recovery. That allows the oven to keep up during high volume. Once your controls are dialed in, a plate covers them up. You can truly set it and forget it. All the operator has to worry about is coming in the morning, turning this dial on. The OneRev will take care of all heat management for the rest of the day. One thing you'll notice about the front of the oven here, there is no heat setting or readout, and that's because we have heat coming from multiple directions in the oven, so it's really hard to measure one particular temperature. We don't really need that heat readout to tell us how to bake pizza. We'll just adjust these controls down here to get the correct setting for the pizza that we're baking. So we've got our pizzas built here. We're ready to go into the OneRev. The first pie that's going in, plain cheese, very lightly topped. Next that's going in behind it is a much heavier pie. We've got onions, bell pepper, mushroom, and salami on that. We're going to see how the oven responds to a light pizza versus a heavy pizza. Going in right behind that pizza is a 16-inch pie. Again, we're going to see how the OneRev adjusts all on its own based on the heat that it's seeing coming out of the floor. Lastly, we're going to go in a much lighter topped margarita pie going in behind it. The end result should be all evenly baked, evenly top and bottom color on these pizzas. So we're getting ready to fire our first pizza. As the operator, all I need to know to do is load and unload pizzas. So we're going to go ahead and load our first pizza. It just goes right inside the doorway, and the oven will start moving towards the right. As this pizza moves To the right, it's passing over a sensor that's going to tell the oven how much heat to apply to the floor as that pizza goes around. So right now it's reading a cheese pizza, a little bit lighter pie. It's not going to apply as much heat as this heavier pie that's coming in right behind it. So I'm going to give that just a second to move out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and load this one right behind it. Now that sensor is going to take a different reading. We actually call that the pizza tracker because it's actually tracking the pizza as it goes through the oven and applying just the right amount of heat from the underfloor burner as it goes through. So now we're going in with an even bigger, heavier pizza. That sensor is going to take that reading and say, okay, we've dropped even more temperature. We need to apply that correct amount as it goes around. Lastly, we're going in with our margarita pizza. As I've said before, the pizza tracker is doing its job. It's applying the right amount of heat to all these different size and weight pizzas. That's nearly impossible to do in any other type of oven like this. When you just have the heat on one side, the pizza's only going to cook from one side. So that's what the OneRev does really well. It's able to apply that heat accordingly, depending on the size and the weight of the pizza. We're going to get an even, perfect bake every single time. Our first pizza is approaching that finishing flame. We talked about that earlier. That flame is going to get color to the top of the pizza. You can see it coloring in real time there. It's going to get a nice even bake across the top. Notice how that cheese is bubbling. We're seeing steam and smoke coming off the floor. It's really just a great looking pizza coming through, very artisan in its appearance. And as this pizza approaches where it began, we're just going to go ahead and grab it. Take a look at that really nicely baked pie. And now we have our heavier pizza coming through here. We're about to pull that. We'll notice too that the top is really evenly baked, just like the first one. We didn't have to spin it. We didn't have to make any adjustments. The oven did all that on its own. And next we have our larger pizza coming through. So again, notice how that finishing flame is applying a really great crust, really great color on the crust. We've got the bubbling cheese. We got even baking all the way around, even though this pizza is much larger than the other two that we just took out. And lastly, we have our margarita pie coming out. Again, the oven is applying the right amount of heat. We're going to get consistent results every single time. One question we get a lot about the OneRev is what's the capacity of it? How many pizzas can it produce in an hour? This will be dependent on the size of the pizzas you're baking and the speed of the rotation. So one good reference point is if you're baking all 11-inch pies and you have a 3.5 minute rotation, the oven will produce about 180 pizzas in 1 hour. So we have our pies baked, they're out of the oven. Again, we had our plain cheese pizza that went in first, followed by about a 4-topping pizza. Both these were 11-inch, followed by a 16-inch, and then our 11-inch margarita. You can see how they all cooked very evenly across. We're gonna go through and actually show you what the bottoms look like here now. On our first cheese pizza, great color on the bottom. And again, hitting with zero recovery, right? The floor is always going to respond and apply the right amount of heat that's necessary to bake the bottoms. We're going to look at this margarita here. Nice even bake across the bottom. All right, we'll take one last look here before we cut into these. Notice how the tops are evenly baked. We don't have one side that's charred and one side that's raw. We have a nice even bake all the way around. And that's because of that finishing flame in the OneRev. All right, let's cut into this pizza and see how we did. We'll take a look at how this baked. We got a nice rise in the crust. It's baked all the way through. It's still very, very hot. So you'll notice here on our heavy top pizza, we've got a nice bake, nice rise on the crust. It baked just as well as the single topping cheese pizza, even though this had several more toppings on it. So to summarize what we've seen today, we saw the OneRev bake pizzas perfectly in one rotation. We saw different size pizzas and different amounts of toppings baked perfectly, and that once again is the pizza tracker applying the right amount of heat to the floor to get us the optimal bake. And at the end of the day, you don't need to be a skilled chef to produce pizza out of this oven. All you have to do is make, load, and unload the pizza. The OneRev will do the rest for you. That's it for today. We'd love for you to come out and demo OneRev for yourself. Just give us a call or visit our website.